So this video was brought to my attention. It's literally this video. And I just have really three things. Three things I want to point out about this video. Thing number one, do not show up to a court appearance wearing a shirt with vulgarity on it. I mean, you can if you want to. It's not like it's illegal. But I'm just saying, apparently some people have difficulty determining when I'm giving practical advice and when I'm giving just straight up, this is what the law is intended to be. This is practical advice. Practical advice is show decorum when you go into court, show respect. It is common courtesy. It is politeness. It is kind of the rules of society. And if you go in and you're being disrespectful, even just in wearing a t-shirt with vulgarity on it, the judge will treat you differently. Is the judge supposed to treat you differently? No, he's not. But he will. It's just the way people are. I have noticed this. Like I've said before, I started my career doing very rough work, working on a loading dock, things like that. I come from a very not wealthy family. I dressed low, I dressed dirty, I dressed, typical white trash kind of guy. And I got treated like a typical white trash kind of guy. And it's very different once you start rolling around in a suit and tie. You get treated differently. It's just what people do. I think a lot of what people kind of ascribe to racism, I think, is in a large part due to the way people dress and act. There's studies. If you work in sales, and yes, I have worked extensively in sales. If you work in sales, they will tell you that the uniform changes the way a person acts. And if you wonder why stores require uniforms and have dress codes, it's because people behave differently when they dress differently. You may not think you do, but you do. So, or at least on average, people do. Maybe you personally don't, but on average, people act differently when they're dressed in a suit than they do when they're dressed in a t-shirt and jeans. It may be kind of a reflection sort of thing where you reflect the attitudes and actions of the people you're dealing with. People see you in a suit, they will approach you differently because you're in a suit, and because you're approached differently, maybe you'll react differently, etc., etc. So anyway, this is practical advice. If you're going to a court hearing, dress nice. I would strongly recommend wearing a suit. I would strongly recommend everybody have a suit, an actual fitted suit with fitted slacks and a fitted jacket, a nice clean shirt with a crisp collar and a tie. And make sure that you have good shoes and a belt that matches the shoes. That's like my minimum. You could tell, like when I go into court and I'm looking around, you could pick out the attorneys. Attorneys I don't know what it is. We all have these flashing signs above our head that say we're attorneys. And you could pick out the businessmen and the police officers who are dressed up, in their police officers look like police officers even when they're in a suit. But like businessmen, you could tell it's a little bit different. They're not dressing for the court. That's just their normal business attire. And then you could see the guys, the working class guys who have come in, on charges or whatever. And, you can tell by their hands that they work. You can tell by the way they're tanned that they work. And they come in wearing t-shirts, or maybe their wife really chewed on them and they're wearing just plain old black slacks that they got off the rack that aren't fitted to them, so they're maybe the wrong length. It's weird, like dress slacks that you get from an actual like Men's Warehouse or Nordstrom or someplace like that. They fit different. They wear different. They're just made better. But you can only make one first impression, and if a judge has to decide whether or not you're the kind of guy who's going to go into a post office and act the fool and make people upset and make people react to you, who do you think is more likely, like in your mind, who do you think is more likely to go in there making a stink? This guy in his Bombing for Peace shirt, or somebody in a suit and tie? Because you got to remember, the prosecution's going to try to paint him, they're going to try to paint Monkey as a thug, as a miscreant, as a rapscallion. And he's dressing the part of a thug, a miscreant, a rapscallion. His defense attorney is going to try to paint him as an upstanding member of society who is engaged in peaceful civil rights activism. But he looks like a rapscallion. I like that word, rapscallion, by the way. I didn't know if you could tell. That's thing number one. Thing number two, if your lawyer is asking you for legal advice, you can presume that the lawyer is being sarcastic. And if you start dropping things like Fordyce versus Seattle, things that don't apply when you're filming in a post office or DMV, your lawyer's messing with you. He's not really asking you for legal advice. I can tell you that just right off the bat. And the third thing is the section D right here, D2. Monkey refers to it. He thinks that that's going to be the silver bullet. I don't know if you remember from the cases that I read yesterday, but there was one gal who was a photographer, and she was arrested on 602.1A. He's on 602.1B, but it doesn't really matter. They're both the exact same thing. Just one's for a business and the other one is for a public agency. But they didn't bring up this particular portion in that. And the reason why they didn't bring it up is because you're not getting busted for filming. You're getting busted for intentionally interfering. Maybe you also remember the Mater picker, where they were hand out brochures next to the Mater picker, but they weren't interfering with anybody getting to the tomato picker or interacting with the tomato picker. So they weren't interfering. Had Monkey simply gone into that, I think it was a DMV, had he simply gone into that DMV and filmed, not interacted with anybody, not created a disturbance, just filmed, and then they tried to get him on this? Like if everybody else was reacting, but all Monkey was doing was just a complete bunny boot silent treatment, just standing in the corner, filming, not interacting, not causing any problems, but everybody else was like having a problem with him and they caused the interference, then he could be like, hey, I am engaged only in an activity that's protected by the California Constitution, because the California Constitution would protect him in that instance, I think, based on the case law that I've read. Then that would be fine. But they're not getting him for filming. They're getting him for creating the disturbance, for interfering with the business carried on there. By jabbering with the guy. He was the source of it. And he reacted to it. So those are the three things I wanted to bring up in this video. I like the naming convention. Thanks for watching. Have a happy 4th of July.